Trump has just caused Europe to erupt, plunging it into chaos, and the impact is already being felt at the heart of the continent's politics, energy, and security. This Wednesday, April 29, 2026, the crisis has stopped being just a distant dispute in the Middle East and has started to affect European governments, companies, consumers, and NATO itself. I'll tell you all about it in a moment, but right now, you'll want to subscribe to the channel to stay well informed with real-time information and the best journalism you've ever seen. Milson Alves News, where credibility is the standard. The pressure started at the Strait of Hormuz. The passage, one of the most sensitive routes in global energy trade, has been practically blocked since the beginning of March. Europe tried to stay on the fence, avoided getting directly involved in the United States operation, avoided giving Trump the support he wanted, and preferred to treat the crisis as if it were a mental problem. But now the bill has come due. Reuters reported that the European Union will allow governments to spend more on subsidies for companies affected by the spike in fuel and fertilizer prices caused by the war with Iran and the effective shutdown of Hormuz. Agriculture, fishing, rail, road, and maritime transport companies will be able to receive compensation of up to 70% of the cost increases with a limit of 50,000 euros per company. This move shows that Brussels knows the size of the problem. When a bloc needs to make exceptions to its own rules to support basic sectors of the economy, it's a sign that the pressure has stopped being just talk and has turned into losses. The same investigation indicates that European governments have already spent more than 13 billion euros on fuel tax cuts and other measures. The thing is, much of that money wasn't directed to the hardest hit sectors. In other words, Europe is spending a lot, spending quickly, and still trying to figure out where to put the money. And that's where the main point comes in. Trump warned that Hormuz wasn't a minor detail. Europe depends on this route more than it would like to admit. When ships stop moving, when insurers raise costs, when suppliers pull back, and when energy prices rise, ordinary people feel it at the supermarket, in transportation, and in the bills businesses have to pay. According to Reuters, Trump asked Iran to accept the deal, and at the same time, a report from the Wall Street Journal, cited by the agency, indicated that the president instructed aides to prepare for a prolonged blockade of Iranian ports. The strategy is tough, but it has clear political logic to squeeze the Iranian economy without immediately rushing into a larger military escalation. Tehran is trying to resist, and it says it can withstand the pressure by using alternative routes, but the numbers show cracks. The Iranian currency has fallen to a historic low, according to the Iranian student news agency cited by Reuters. And inflation in the Iranian month ending April 20 reached 65.8%. This is the kind of pressure that corrodes the regime from within, even when the leaders try to project strength outward. What's this? France is splitting. NATO, which should project an image of unity, is already discussing reducing or abandoning the recent practice of holding annual summits. The information published based on Reuters reporting shows that the change is being considered partly to avoid tense meetings with Trump. In simple terms, the most powerful military alliance in the West is considering changing its diplomatic routine. Because it doesn't want to face direct pressure from the American president. This is serious for the European image. NATO was built on the promise of collective defense, but now its members are seen arguing over who pays, who acts, and who takes the risk. Trump is demanding more action from the allies, especially in light of the crisis in the Gulf. Many European governments want American protection, want energy stability, and want open routes, but they hesitate when it's time to put political capital and real force on the table. In Germany, the crisis has turned into an open dispute. Friedrich Merz tried to say that his relationship with Trump is still good, but he once again expressed concern about the economic impact of the war. He stated that Germany and Europe are suffering from the consequences of the crisis, including the closure of Hormuz, which has a direct effect on energy supply and unemployment. At the same time, Reuters reported that Trump criticized Merz, after the German Chancellor said that Iran was humiliating the United States by bringing American officials to fruitless negotiations in Pakistan. This statement by Merz was poorly received because it exposed European nervousness. Instead of clearly supporting the pressure against Iran, the German leadership began to question the American strategy. But Germany itself is one of the biggest economic victims of the crisis. Economic sentiment in the Eurozone fell to the lowest level in 3.5 years in April, according to data from the European Commission cited by Reuters. The indicator dropped from 96.6 to 93 points, while confidence in the services sector fell to the lowest level in 5 years. Inflation also became a concern again. The expectation mentioned by Reuters is an increase to 2.9% in April compared to 2.6%. For the European Central Bank, this rise comes at the worst possible time. Weak growth, energy under pressure, and companies already expecting new price increases. Europe is facing a familiar trap. If it raises interest rates, it squeezes a fragile economy. If it doesn't, it lets inflation gain strength. In the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer also feels the pressure. Downing Street reported in March that Starmer and Trump agreed by phone that the reopening of Hormuz was exceptional, restoring stability to global energy markets. The conversation marks a turning point in the problem. London may even try to keep a political distance from Trump's strategy, but it can't escape the economic impact. If oil prices rise, if shipping costs go up, and if energy threatens to run out, the British government loses ground at home. This scenario helps explain why Trump appears stronger on the board. He pressures Europe because he knows the continent needs the Strait of Hormuz to remain open. The difference is that Washington wants to turn this need into pressure against Iran, while some Europeans prefer to just ease the effects of the crisis without directly confronting its origin. For Trump, that's weakness. For European governments, it's fear of escalation. In practice, it's Europe asking for stability without wanting to pay the political price for stability. As if the energy crisis and the tension with Washington weren't enough, China also took advantage of Europe's weakness. Beijing criticized the European Union's industrial plan, known as the Industrial Accelerator Act, created to boost European-made technologies and products. According to Euronews, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce accused the proposal of creating barriers to foreign investment and institutional discrimination, and also indicated that countermeasures could be adopted if dialogue does not resolve the impasse. Here is the other side of Europe's upheaval. The European Union wants to reduce its dependence on China in strategic sectors such as clean technologies, cars, aluminum, steel, and cement. But when it tries to strengthen its own industry, it receives economic threats from Beijing. This shows a deep vulnerability. Europe has put itself in an overly comfortable position for years. Vulnerable energy supplies from abroad, industry dependent on external supply chains, and security sustained by the American security umbrella. Now, all three pillars are shaking at the same time. Trump understood this imbalance before many European leaders admitted it. He pushes for more production, more control over economic borders, and more confrontation with hostile regimes. Europe is still trying to protect a model that depends on cheap energy, open trade, and American military protection. When the world becomes unstable, this model clashes with reality. The crisis with Iran has laid all this bare. The Iranian regime is trying to use Hormuz as an economic weapon. China is trying to prevent Europe from rebuilding its industrial base independently. NATO is trying to avoid internal political clashes. Germany and the United Kingdom are trying to contain domestic damage. And Trump, in the midst of this scenario, turns pressure into a negotiation tool. The most serious point is that Europe is reacting, not leading. It reacts to energy prices with subsidies. It reacts to Chinese pressure with talk of dialogue. It reacts to Trump's demands by trying to reduce public exposure. It reacts to Iran by trying to survive the impact of Hormuz. That's why the word chaos comes up so strongly. Not because the streets are in total collapse, but because the continent's central decisions seem delayed in the face of a crisis that is moving faster. In the end, the fact is straightforward. Trump presented Europe with a choice it tried to avoid. Either it clearly supports the pressure against Iran and takes on the political cost of that, or it keeps paying the price of an energy crisis that is hitting its economy from within. The eruption started in Hormuz and passed through Washington. It reached Brussels, Berlin, and London, and now it exposes a Europe that wanted to stay away from the war, but it found out that the war has already made its way into its economy. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. At the end, check the comments to engage more with the Milson Alves News community.